Okay. Aloha, everyone. My name is Jamie Felicitas Perkins. I wear a few hats at the School of Community and Global Health. I'm an assistant professor of practice. I am the DRPH program director, and also the applied practice experience coordinator. And I have the pleasure of being moderator for this fireside chat with Jake Ryann Sumibcay. So a round of applause. And I also wanted to thank Career and Professional Development for co-hosting this with the School of Community and Global Health. So I'm going to introduce Jake, and then I'll give you an overview of what today is going to be like. So Dr. Jake Ryann Sumibcay is an assistant professor of health policy and management at the Thompson School of Social Work and Public Health at the University of Hawai at Mānoa, a proud alumnus of CGU's School of Community and Global Health. Jake is an alum of our DRPH program, our Doctor of Public Health program with the class of 2022, and he also holds a Master of Public Health as part of the class of 2016. So all those experiences have equipped him with a strong foundation in public health research and leadership. Before joining the University of Hawaii, Jake held dual appointments as a Yerby postdoctoral fellow at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health and a health and human rights fellow. And he was also a health and human rights fellow at Harvard's FXB Center for Health and Human Rights. His interdisciplinary expertise is deeply rooted in his commitment to advancing health equity for underserved populations. Jake's research primarily focuses on the health and well-being of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities, with a particular emphasis on how their racialized and cultural representations impact public health policy, practice, and research. So again, please join me in welcoming Dr. Jake Ryann Sumibcay. Um,
Mhm.
so yay! Okay, so today we're going to kind of take this within the context of Jake's journey. So we're going to first talk about his journey from when he transitioned from being a student to being an applicant on the job market. And then we're going to transition over to when he actually got a job offer and transitioned to being a professional. And then we'll close out. So Jake, before we start, did you want to share, please share a little bit about your trajectory from you were a student all the way up until you put yourself on the job market?
Sure. But first, I want to say mahalo. Thank you for the introduction, Jamie. Thank you, everyone. A special thank you to Deborah and the CGU Career and Professional Development Center for hosting this chat. And I want to say that what I'm sharing today is based on my personal experience, so please take it with a grain of salt. However, I hope that what the information that I do share will be helpful to you as you navigate your own career path here at CGU, and as you begin to think about your journeys after you've earned your degree. So I attended CGU for both my MPH and DRPH degrees, as Jamie had mentioned, and have been at CGU collectively for about 8 years. Um, and prior to CGU, I was working as a health promotion specialist in a public health research project at Seattle Children's in Seattle, Washington. In this role, I worked both in the community directly with the research participants, but also on the side where we read the literature, come up with the research questions, and develop protocols for the project. So both sides gave me the opportunity to learn about the research process, public health approach, and an interest grew from there. And prior to working at Seattle Children's, I graduated from my bachelor's degree in international studies with a focus on international development and global health. So fundamentally, I had a public health background, but this was truly the opportunity to put it into practice. So my PI at the time encouraged me to pursue graduate studies. Um, didn't say, but he definitely named public health as something that I should be going towards, and what led me to graduate school at CGU. Initially, I wanted to stay in Washington, but I had missed the deadline to apply for the public health program at the University of Washington. So I kind of just branched out down the West Coast. So looking at schools in Oregon, but also in California. But ultimately, I wanted to be somewhere warm. So I definitely looked at schools in Southern California. I've applied to programs at USC, Loma Linda, but ultimately I found CGU mainly because of the area, but also just the class sizes of the program. And I really love the focus on community and global health. That's what really drawn me to CGU. Um, and while I was at CGU, through the MPH program, I chose the concentration of health promotion, education, and evaluation. I've chosen this track mainly because I felt like it aligned with my experience. And after going through the program, I can say that like the concentration really did uh, align with my past work, but also built upon the skills that I've gained. And much of the coursework in the HPEE track has been applicable in my real world experience in research and doing programming for community organizations that I've worked with in the past. Um, so the classes included like program planning, curriculum development, evaluation, and I feel like this concentration really encompasses the hands-on work in public health with the direct interactions with the communities and the targeted populations that we've engaged with. Um, and I can't say that I've been able to fully engage and fully experience the online modalities as the programs are of current, as I was done with coursework prior to the pivot of the pandemic. But I love that CG's classes were small and that they were collaborative and are mostly structured to be seminars. Many of the professors that I've had encouraged the active participation through the discussion of the ideas, the topics we were learning, and all the readings that were assigned to us in the course. Um, and I've had experience both um, large institutions and smaller institutions, but I definitely do like the smaller one that CGU had. It is cliche when they say that smaller size classrooms really allow for the individual attention and give room for us to actively engage with each other. But truly, I feel like that was what the spirit of public health was, and it gets me excited to see that happening in the classroom, but also in the real world setting. I wanted to note that I also maintained my connection with my PI while I was going through graduate school, and I was fortunate enough to complete my applied learning experience and internship back at my old job. So I went back to Seattle for my internship term, and I was able to do the work that I was working in the past, but also work on a few new projects that they were working on as well. And that's what I had presented for my MPH practicum. Um, and I worked at UCLA after graduating from the MPH program at the UCLA Center for Cancer Prevention and Control Research on a nicotine prevention intervention, where we worked with middle school and high school youth in the South Bay area, so Torrance, Carson, um, and parts of Long Beach, and then also in South LA. And I was drawn to the methods of community-based participatory research, and this was definitely the area that I have been working ever since. And I definitely centered my career around using the principles of CBPR, and have been working in several projects for almost 5 years, and I really do enjoy it. And then during that time, that gap between graduating from the MPH and wanting to pursue the DRPH, uh, I was sort of sitting on like whether or not I wanted to continue just doing research or sort of enhance my sort of learning and wanting to pursue a higher degree. So ultimately, I did want to get the DR page mainly because it was a new program at CGU, and they needed students, but it was also an opportunity to kind of build with the school in this program. And I think part of it was wanting to advance my level of competencies in public health, uh, and also had the opportunity to integrate the learning into practice as the DRPH program is a practicum-based program. Um, and I feel like I have more leverage with the DRPH rather than pursuing like a traditional PhD, because I have the opportunity to be in sort of like higher level positions, but also to work in positions like government or academia as I'm currently in, or do research. And then applying my passion for CBPR during the DRPH program was sort of enhanced in that sense. But I was also part of a fellowship that helped supported my doctoral journey. So it was the Health Policy Research Scholars Program that was funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And this funded me through 4 years. And this was a pre-doctoral program that helped supported students to leverage our research areas and introducing principles of health policy process. Um, and throughout my time at CGU, but also through this program, I was sort of able to marry a sort of policy issue with the research or the sort of project that I've been involved in through the coursework at CGH. So this is how I sort of delved into looking at a particular population. Oh, sorry, something happened with my computer. I'm sure everyone's still all there. Yeah, okay. Um, I was sort of able to bridge my particular area of focus, which is health disparities, with the focus on Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders, and a policy issue. So one of the core things that I've been able to see with this population is sort of the underrepresentation of this population in the data, mainly because they are mostly combined as a racial category when we look at the literature of public health research, or even like any type of science research. These populations are always combined, AA and HPI. And oftentimes these data and the findings get lost, and we always sort of mixed into the issues of what's happening and like miss overlook what's truly happening in these populations. So the policy leverage is looking at data disaggregation practices from both the research end, but also in the translational end when policymakers uh, sort of forge language around how data is collected at the federal level. And uh, this is why we see sort of the separation or the disaggregation of the race groups of the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Island. They are their own race categories. And then now we're introducing the Middle Eastern, North African categories, which is being currently tested by the OMB and the US Census. So those are the sort of areas, the key areas that I've been working on and sort of involved in that within my own work. And I was able to carry that focus into my postdoctoral fellowship at Harvard. Um, while I sort of just put the policy on the back end, I wanted to focus truly on what the root causes of health disparities were. And so my dissertation, I'm sort of bouncing back, but like my dissertation focused on structural racism as the fundamental cause of health disparities among Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander populations. So I brought that work. That was mostly what I focused on during my postdoctoral fellowship. And I was able to publish two papers out of my dissertation through my postdoctoral fellowship, and sort of bridge that into my appointment at the FXB Center, where we focused on health and human rights. but it was a fellowship that was tailored on the focus on structural racism. So I was fortunate enough to work with several colleagues or other fellows who were focused on structural racism, but focused on different areas of structural racism. So one was focused on maternal child health. Another fellow was focused on medical training and medical school training for future practitioners and the medical curriculum and how that is intertwined with the way that healthcare is being delivered through medical school training and how um, structural racism is addressed within their curricula. And then another was a public health practitioner who sits on the Boston Health Commission, and hers was mainly looking at sort of the delivery of health in the Boston area, but through the impact of COVID and how the pandemic was addressed in not only Boston but also the state of Massachusetts. Um, so I spent 2 years in my fellowship, and during that time was definitely protected time, but also allowed me to really think about where I wanted to go next. I wanted to extend my postdoctoral fellowship for a third year, but because I was a dual appointed fellow, one of my fellowships said yes, and the other said, I'm sorry, we don't have enough funding to fund you for an additional third year. So that ultimately put me into the job market. And it was abrupt because that decision came during mid application season. So usually jobs are posted at the end of summer through the fall, and then applications are due toward the end of the fall, and then the interviews begin in the spring for a fall start of the next academic year. So I didn't get the decision of my renewal until November, around this time. And I ultimately decided that okay, I will start applying for jobs after this postdoc. And it was a bit of a messy situation, but I was able to kind of organize myself and really depended on sort of the short amount of time that I have, but leaned on a lot of my connections and my network to help me like put together applications and help prep me for interviews and how to get through this job market process. Um,
So,
and
Jake,
yeah.
this is a really wonderful context to see. And I mean, we actually have some students that are outside of SCGH. And so
Oh,
this was wonderful context because I think what we're seeing here is that from the time Jake was a student, he really built upon his experiences that led him to different directions. And so I'm going to take a step back on take a step backwards on your journey. So, when you were a student, particularly at CGU, you mentioned that you received a fellowship that supported you throughout your time as a doctoral student. So, how did you come about finding that fellowship, and what advice would you give to our students who are looking for similar opportunities to support them through their graduate program?
yeah. So I'm sorry to say that I did not find this fellowship. It was actually um, I was in a meeting, an advising meeting with one of our faculty members at SCGH. And through our conversation, she was like, "Oh, I know this program that you might be interested in. Why don't you apply for it?" And through her support, but also just my wanting to kind of build my experience on applying for grants or applying for funding, I think I took this as an opportunity. And we were able to submit an application, put together the whole thing, and sort of waited for months until the decision was made, and was able to be selected as part of a cohort for this program. Um, but looking back, I've worked with students who as an alumnus of the fellowship program, I've worked with students who are interested in applying for the HPRS or the Health Policy Research Scholars Program. Um, and to look for these sort of funding and to look for these programs, they're posted all over. Like you can find them on LinkedIn. But also, I think the key way to kind of learn how to put together a funding application for a particular program is to reach out to former people who have been selected or uh, fellows and alumni of certain programs, and just sort of learn from them on sort of what their experiences were, what the application process was. Um, and I'm happy to say that sort of some of the students that I've chatted with who were interested in the program were selected for the following cohort. And then I've maintained my connection with this fellowship program, where I currently serve as a reviewer for the applications. Um, and um, if anyone is interested here, it's open to any student, any doctoral student who from any discipline who's interested in leveraging policy in their work. And it's open to second year doctoral students, and you're funded for 4 years. And sort of the engagement is throughout the 4 years, where you meet with cohort members online, but also in person.
So
And
I think Jake, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I think you mentioned a couple of really great points that are beneficial for all students to know is that leverage the resources that are available to you as a doctoral student, and that would be the faculty, because what sets a university apart from another university are the unique faculty and the composition of faculty, and they bring with them an extensive network that is not seen anywhere else. So if you haven't already connected with your faculty members, they may be able to share with you opportunities that you may have not otherwise known about, such as Jake not knowing about this fellowship. Also, career and professional development has resources to support you. And even as after you graduate, you have access to CPD as an alum. I don't know if a lot of students know that, but you have that access. And they have services that can support you to find these fellowships. So Jake, I wanted to then ask you about, so there's opportunity for students to find fellowships throughout their doctoral career, but then how did you decide? So you mentioned that you went from being a student to a postdoc. So how did you decide to go into a postdoc instead of applying for a job?
yeah, that was also, again, my experience, and take this with a grain of salt. But like in between sort of data collecting and doing my dissertation, you have to sit with sort of what you want to do after getting your degree or after passing those milestones of completing the program. Um, and part of me wanted to get on the job market and look for a job that sort of I was able to kind of apply this degree, but also wanting to build upon the research work that I've been currently doing for my dissertation, and that ultimately led me to look for a postdoc that would support that research area. Um, so I applied for a postdoc, which essentially was buying more time to decide what I wanted to do, but also have room to continue my research. So I was selected for this uh, postdoctoral fellowship, um, and I think putting together that application was similar to how I put together my job applications as well. It was with that very short amount of time that I had in when the applications were due. Um, it was really trying to stay on task and organized, and getting all of the required pieces like a letter of recommendation from my mentors, your transcripts, and also putting together your statement, so your personal statement and These sort of things mirror what it's like when you apply for an academic job market position. They will ask for a personal statement, but also a diversity statement, a teaching statement, and uh, it was really hard to kind of do all of that in the mix of doing a dissertation. So I think I took it as taking a break from doing the research stuff and like putting together this application, um, and just sort of breaking my time off just to kind of take my mind off of the busy work that's happening. Um,
Jake,
but
how did you find out about your postdoc?
so I sat in sort of like job talks and panels, and they would often promote this within the presentation. So it was sort of an academic panel that I was sitting on, and it was led by a few colleagues that I've known within my network. And they I think there was like time left on the side, and it's like, hey, I know this postdoc that might fit to what you're looking for. So they sent me sort of all the information, and I was able to kind of work with them mainly because they were also alumni of the postdoctoral fellowship program. So it's like really working with people who have experience or have gone through these programs and being able to help you uh, to kind of build your application, but also like think about what you can do to make your application unique in that sense.
So, Jay, I think you mentioned a few key points. I think they're for all students who are still in school, you need to consider your time while you're a student to prepare yourself so there's not a stagnant period after graduation. And CPD can support you with that. They have specific milestone trajectories specific for different fields and the different departments across the school. So if you have not checked it out, I highly recommend that you check out CPD's resources. I think you also mentioned the need to adapt your resume specific for a postdoc. So it's all about adaptation of the materials that you're presenting. CPD can support you with that, which is why we're hosting this, to kind of like reinforce the resources that CPD has for you. So not just having a template that you're going to Xerox copy. I think I'm sharing my age, but that you're going to be copying and just sending off without adaptation. That's probably not the best thing to do. The other thing that you mentioned is the key for networking, that you found this opportunity by utilizing those opportunities that you were aware of and putting yourself out there so that you can learn more. So, again, managing your time prior to graduation. Actually, that's the question that I had. At what point prior to graduation, because you mentioned that you were doing your dissertation at the same time and you had to take a break, how long prior to graduation did you start focusing on applying for your postdoc? And what would you have done differently with your timeline?
So this is conducive to your project that you've sort of proposed for your dissertation. And I know all programs are different. Some people do like a three-paper dissertation, or one is like a practice-based or project-based dissertation. So it really depends on your that timeline that you've set for yourself for your dissertation. But generally, I want to say like a year in advance to think about like where you would like to be after graduating, or even a year and a half in advance, um, given like the timeline that it takes to collect data or to do your analyses and also to write. So it's really important to plan your time wisely. Um, and while I did have a timeline for my project, for my dissertation project, it sort of took a bit longer than I had expected as far as like the data collection pieces, mainly because I was doing qualitative primary data collection. Um, and through that, I realized like I've been doing it like mostly every day or every week, and it's just like a constant like uh, trying to get through everything, but I think having to find pockets of time to think about other things was really helpful. Sort of took off like sort of that mental stress on having this very narrow focus, but to kind of move on and like, think about life uh, outside of finishing.
So
So
you're really talking about time management and planning your timeline. And so I think I see this as DRPH, the DRPH program advisor. I feel like a lot of students focus a lot on the key elements of what they need to do to get through the program, but they forget about the process steps on how they're going to actually be doing that, and integrated within that, considering your personal trajectory out after graduation. So there's lots of things to consider with your timeline. But I want to pause here a little bit and give Michelle time, because you did mention that and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Michelle, but you did mention that based on your experience, you would recommend starting a year before you graduate. Michelle, what would be that, generally for people in different fields and sectors, in different programs, when should they start really thinking about life after graduation, do you think? Would you recommend?
Yeah, hi everybody. Absolutely. I think the thing is that we always should be thinking. I was talking to the provost last night and we were talking about people applying, and I said I'm always applying for jobs. I'm always looking. I think that we always have to kind of be and have that temperature of where things are. Um, Time goes by fast. And so, I work with such an amazing team, and a lot of them they're on the screen too. And we'll all say pretty much the same thing, where if you can start looking now and get a feel of what you like and what you don't like, it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to change right now. But if you can start guiding yourself and building that network, and I know that I think it was Maggie or someone had put in there, like, is the networking is important. Networking is very important. And it's not something that we just do when we need it. It's something we continuously do. And so if you can do those things where you can constantly get out there and look to see how the economy is evolving and how the job positions are changing and so on, it's more beneficial for you. And we never know. Opportunity may not. And you may be ready or not ready. So going to your question, Jamie, and I'm sorry I kind of opened that up. I think that there really is, it's never too early just to explore. Some of you are in a program for 4 semesters. Some of you are in a program for 8 semesters. I think there's always an opportunity, and you may bump into a fellowship or some type of internship or something where you can kind of explore a little bit more as well. So
Thank
Deborah
you.
Rowe, anybody?
No, I agree with what Michelle is saying. When students come,
Mhm.
maybe like 6 months left, it's not that it's too late, but you are later in the game. So the first day that you come onto campus, I do suggest that, after you get situated, that you come and see our office, because you're preparing after you get your degree, which is your goal, your immediate goal. The next step after that is to find employment. So you want to find as soon as possible. And after listening to Jake, it sounds like a lot of his connections and networks and also experiences, he didn't necessarily know where his next opportunity or fellowship was going to come from, but his network actually helped a lot in that case. So I would say that that's something that we should be active.
Yeah. So Michelle, and I'm going to reiterate what Bro said, is that it seems that you have to be proactive and utilizing the resources that you may or may not know are available to you. That includes
Mhm.
connecting with your faculty. That includes connecting
Absolutely.
with your peers. That includes connecting with the CPD. And part of being active is maintaining a pulse in the field, in the job market throughout your duration in your program. So thanks for reiterating that. And then
Yeah.
Michelle, do you have anything else to add?
Was it yesterday? I can't remember. I think we've done so many presentations. Sarah's on the screen, and we were doing a presentation for Psychi yesterday, and we were talking about internships and so on. And one of the things was, it's like, tap into your faculty. They want to help you. They're there in your life for a reason. Or a small university, because they want to have that intimate relationship with you. They really want to be a part of your life. and use our resources. And they're all over the board in the sense of what you need at that moment. If you just want to talk about an offer, if you just want to talk about, I have no idea what I want to do at this moment in my life. I love this industry, but I haven't narrowed it down. Yes, and CWR, I mean, Marcus is amazing. We have a community for a reason, and we're all so excited to refer if we need to. There's no shame in saying, I don't know, but I know Marcus knows, or I know Jamie knows, or Bree knows, or Jolanda, I don't know. And so we want you to take advantage of this and be a part of it. But when Sierra and I were presenting yesterday, it was great questions, and use all of those resources around you. So I could talk forever, but this is Jake's time.
Yeah. So Jake, I'm gonna move on into Jake's next phase of his career trajectory, which is transitioning from a student to a professional after he received the job. Or actually, I'm gonna take a step back there. But basically, there are resources available to you, and all of those blast emails you get, there may be golden nuggets in there. Don't ignore them. There are a lot of resources, and I would encourage everyone that if you don't, regardless of where you are in your program, if you do not have a timeline that you've created for yourself after graduation, start now. Start something, reach out to the CPD, look at their resources because they do have those timeline trajectories available for you. Okay, maybe Deborah, in the chat, would you be open to, I know that you have milestone maps and stuff. Can you like share those links out if you're able to, or anybody from CPD, about some resources that we've talked about? Jake, I do eventually want to go to get your insight about your transition from being a student to a professional, but I wanted to take a step back and talk about your experience. So you eventually decided after your postdoc to move into academia. And this process is sometimes a mystery to students who want to get into academia, but they don't know what the process looks like. So can you kind of share your insight on your overall process and things you wish you knew, things you wish you had prepared for from the time you submitted your application, or even when you were preparing the application, to the time you got the job offer?
Yeah. I think like during my tenure as a postdoctoral fellow, so I was in a program. So one of my appointments was in a program that specifically was geared towards training fellows to be in academic public health. So academia was sort of in that trajectory of sort of a potential job that you would want to enter, like whether it being a professor or in the research realm. But I didn't even see myself going towards academia. I was actually wanting to be either in a sort of think tank, a policy think tank, or doing something more private sector. And I think what really brought me into academia was sort of the engagement with the students that I've had during my fellowship. So I had the opportunity to teach several classes while I was at Harvard. And I think just that sort of engagement with the experiential learning and just talking about public health in the classroom setting was really exciting. And that sort of forced me into looking at jobs that were more that I could apply the teaching part with the research. And there are a lot, and there's a lot of positions that are currently available now, I think. I know that the University of Hawaii, we're looking to fill 3 positions within our department. And I think even sort of what happened with COVID, there's sort of this magnified look on what public health is. And that's sort of the conversations we've had while I was in my fellowship. And how do we make learning better? And I think jumping into an academic position was an opportunity to kind of help in a small sense to like be that person to drive the next generation of public health professionals to like teach them and train them in that sense.
So, Jake, you mentioned, so basically, this seems like you had a turning point, or you evolved from when you started the program all the way up until you ended from when you ended the program. And so, I think sometimes this may freak students out where they're kind of like, I have
Oh,
a clear.
it definitely did freak me out.
Yeah.
It
So
definitely did.
like you have a clear path. When you started the program, you knew what you wanted to do, and then all of a sudden you're turning 180 and going down a completely different path. And I think students should prepare for that there may be experiences and opportunities that you may not otherwise have known about when you started the program versus when you're ending the program. And I think evolution and transcendence is a beautiful thing. I mean, I don't know what your philosophy in life is, but evolution and transcendence and changes can occur. So allow yourself to evolve and allow your hopes and your dreams to evolve along with you as you go through the program. So thanks for kind of like making a note of that.
Yeah.
So I realize that we have like about 15 minutes left. So Jake, I'm just going to kind of spitball questions now. What is the one thing you wish you knew while you were applying in the academic job? For this academic job that you received, or the top things you wish you knew or prepared for?
Mm, I wouldn't say like in preparing for like an academic job, but like one thing that I wish I had more exposure to as a student was a hands-on approach to like crisis management. Um, and but not in a sense where like solving like small scale issues, but more so on the larger systems level. Um, I think in our training, we're often focused on like specific research or projects, which gives us like the technical expertise, but don't always prepare us for like real world crisis that require like thinking and like big picture strategies. Um, and I think I know that there are courses in like conflict management and learning how to handle different perspectives, but I think a stronger emphasis on system thinking and like upstream crisis management would have been more invaluable. Granted that while I was a student, like the pandemic hit, and I was working at CGU at that time, and it became a real world implementation exercise on how to pivot in a time of like crisis. And in learning how to like anticipate and prevent and respond to complex issues before they become like major crises. I think is a skill that I find really crucial, not only in like public health, but I feel like could be helpful in any discipline or in any field. And I think it's like, I don't think I think it's a mindset that allows us to not just solve the immediate problem, but also to build like resilient systems that can better withstand any future challenges that come.
Mhm. So I mean, I think that's really important because I sometimes think that when we're in our specific programs, we stay within our silos. But then once you get into the job market, you're part of a larger system. Like for example, um, I mean, given the new administration, we're worrying about how that will impact our field. And because, I mean, for example, for public health, we are focused on the current social and political climate and how that impacts like what we need to address and how we can support people to live healthier and better lives where they live, learn, work, and play. And I think the same can be said for other industries and fields. So I think you raise a good point that yes, you're going to be focused in your program. Yes, you're going to be focused in on what you need to do within your field, but then your field will be impacted by the larger system that it's part of. So learning how to do systems thinking and crisis management, I think that's a really great point. Is there anything else that you wanted to share about more specific about the process of being a job seeker that you wanted to share that you wish you knew or prepared for?
So I just wanted to like reiterate like what you said in the past about like the networking. Well, like I know that like thinking about where you want to be should have been sort of in your mind at day one when you, I think because part of the decision to wanting to attend grad school is to kind of, build on to the next level and think about your career, whether it's a career pivot or building on skills and competencies. But like I think also part of your day one task of being a grad student is to seek out mentors and advisors more actively. I'm so thankful to have the mentors that I've had at CGU, like and FTGA, like Dr. Paula Palmer, Bree, Jamie, Jay. I think it's important to build yourself a team that could help you in different areas that you feel that you want to develop with them and allow them to help you hold yourself accountable as you move forward towards each milestone. Uh, I know that like getting that degree is like sort of that number one thing that you want, but like I think taking things step by step, ensuring that you meet those milestones, um, and working with people in your circle, in your team, like using your mentors and advisors more actively. Um, and I think it's easy to figure to like need to have everything figured out on your own, but like really have these mentors that can provide you the perspectives that you wouldn't think of, as we've said in prior. Um, and then also to sort of tell yourself that career paths aren't always linear, and that's okay. And that we have to like embrace in learning in each role that we're in, even if it's not exactly where you pictured yourself. And I think that, so I found something recently that I wrote in like sixth grade. It was like a free write assignment for an English class with a journal prompt that asked like where I would be in the future, generally, what that sort of what it asked for. And then I wrote that I wanted to be a doctor, a pediatrician to be specific, and to be living back home in Hawaii, helping my community. And I think seeing that definitely filled me with the confidence in seeing myself having things figured out, even when it doesn't present itself that way. So I think like while it's all messy, trying to navigate like grad school and like the job market and like finding that perfect career, I think like just embracing every opportunity that comes and being able to like put yourself I wouldn't say uncomfortable situations, but put yourself in those places where you feel like you have the opportunity to learn and grow and to build on skills and to apply the skills that you've learned. Um, I think it would make you a better candidate for your next whatever you want to be. So I, that's sort of the sprinkle of like thoughts that are coming into my head right now.
Thank you, Jake. So, I mean, this is really great context. So, within your journey, I think we all um, I mean, I listed some key things that all students should consider based on what Jake shared and within his journey. Be proactive, allow yourself to evolve. And Maggie said, stretch yourself. Yes. And then utilize your resources and network. And guess who can help you with that? CPD. They have an entire session on how to build your social capital. Or they can support you with that. So I guess Michelle, and I'm sorry to put Michelle, Rowe, Deborah, I'm putting you all on the spot. Based on what Jake said, what would homework be for the students that are in this session right now or listening on this recording? What should homework be right now for them to do if they have not already done so to prepare themselves for the next step after graduation? What would be that homework that you would give them?
Go ahead, Deborah.
I was just gonna say, number one, schedule an appointment with our office. I think that's key because we can help you set up some strategies and next steps of what you need to do what you need to be working on. And we meet with students oftentimes, sometimes weekly, sometimes every other week, just to keep them on track. And really your academic journey and your career journey should be simultaneously. As Michelle always says, don't put it off because it's going to come before you know it. And I think that networking is so key. Just asking questions, asking your professors, asking friends, asking alumni, and just building that network and really helping yourself move forward. But yes, schedule an appointment with us. We're happy to start working with you and just to help you get some of those key strategies in place.
And Maggie, I know you had mentioned or asked where, so it's right there. Ro put it in. And then if you have a hard time scheduling an appointment on Handshake, you can always call any of us. Katya's on the screen and Sierra's on the screen, and any of us can help you. Just email us. We'll help you.
So we have about 6 minutes left together. Please feel free to unmute yourselves. Feel free to share a question that you have for Jake. Jake, I know that there was one question previously about the link to the fellowship. I don't know if you're able to take questions and share the link out in the chat.
And then also we can send out documents, Jamie. Like if we think
Okay.
of something, we can send it to everybody on the screen. The only two people we don't know are the extra Jamies that are on the screen.
Yes, please, if you are, I actually shared my personal link when I registered. So if you are, your name says Jamie, but you are not in fact Jamie, please change your, please just in the chat, put who you are so we know who you are so we can follow up with you, or change your name. So I'm going to open it up for questions in the last few minutes that we have. I think we can take one or two questions possibly.
I do want to note the link that I'm putting for the fellowship, it's not active right now, but it will be active in January. But this is the information, and this is where you would go to access the application. But you can definitely reach out to me if you have any questions about this fellowship, particularly, and I'll drop my email in the chat as well.
So any questions?
Yes, Jamie, I have a question. This is Shay.
Hi, Shay, go ahead.
Yeah, my question for Jake or whoever's on the panel, how soon is too soon to start everything with the fellowship for postdoctoral programs and things like that? So I'm in my first year, first semester, so I just don't want to get caught behind with life happening. So I want to be kind of proactive in my approach.
Yeah. Shay, thank you for your question. It definitely wasn't on my radar until I was in sort of my doctoral dissertation era of that sort, given the amount of time that it takes for you to propose and also to like sort of conduct your project. But after coursework, I think like there's a bit of freedom in that space between when you're done with classes and when you're wanting to develop your sort of research proposal. I think that time is like the perfect time where you can think about where you would want to be if you want to pursue a postdoc and start looking at like institutions or centers that will like have these opportunities. Granted that they might not be available to you when it comes time to apply, but at least you know sort of what they're looking for and what the market is as far as like putting together your pieces for your application and who to reach out to as well.
Okay.
I think, did you have specific, the question? So I think Jake talked about kind of like post-graduation, but did you have, you were talking about fellowships for while you were a student, is that correct?
Oh,
Both,
Yeah.
actually, both. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you, Jake, do you have any insight on like when, I mean, Shay is in her first year, in her first semester, how soon?
yeah. So I know that there are fellowships and also grants that are funding available for students to help support like and it's really dependent on the institutions because I know that doctoral programs often give stipends to students to help support tuition or whatnot but like because CGU does give some sort of funding for all graduate students, and I think to help support some of that, that search for like external funding was really important for me, especially like trying to cover like living expenses or like to support any research projects. I think it's really important to look for those prior to applying for grad school, because you would like to have it aligned to sort of the institutions that you are applying for. But I know that there's a small subset when you're in a program currently that there is pre-doctoral fellowships that are available for students. Mainly, I don't know if there are currently after affirmative action, but there was like a lot of diversity fellowships that were available to students prior to your dissertation phase, in which you could apply for funding to help support you in that time.
So basically, Shay, I think it's never too soon to start, or at least
Right.
be aware of it.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yeah.
And then if there is faculty that have any active research, especially with NIH, there are diversity fellowships that they can sort of bring on students to support as well.
And then we have our hand raised by Jamie. That is me. So please state your name and then feel free to go ahead and ask your question.
Sorry, I didn't know it says Jamie, but my name is Yared. I'll correct that later. Thank you. I'm not a DRPH student. I'm not there yet. I'm a I'm an MPH student, but I would like to know uh, what things that I have to pay attention now, because I'm interested in DRPH. Like I don't want to say, oh, I wish I've done this while I was in the MPH. So what are the things that I have to pay attention now to be able to follow your advices and also get into the DRPH program rather than saying, oh, I wish I've done this while I was in the MPH program. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think I was sort of on a similar pathway where I was an MPH student thinking about applying for the doctoral program. Um, but I don't know if this is going to pertain to your own experience, but like I definitely expressed the interest in wanting to pursue a doctoral program at CGU. So talking amongst like my advisors and my mentors to help you put together like your application and wanting to think about like what you want to focus on could because a district like part of being a doctoral student, you have a like focus. So it's truly having those conversations and thinking, I wouldn't say more narrowly, but like more specifically on what you have interest in and what you want to focus on during your time as a doctoral student. But yeah,
No, I'm happy to have that conversation with you, Yared, because I am the DuraPage program director. So and then even I can provide you with advice even if you don't wish to stay at CGU and pursue a doctorate elsewhere. Jake, thank you so much. I want to be cognizant of everyone's time. We are past the hour. This recording will be available and materials will be sent to everyone who registered. And then if you have any specific follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to me, the wonderful CPD team, and then I'm happy to connect you with Drake also if you have any specific questions. So wishing everyone a winning Wednesday. I hope that you find something big or small to celebrate today. All right, wishing everyone a happy day. Have a good one.